Welcome to Nocturnal Knowledge. In the next 1 hour, we're exploring the most powerful lessons from Don't Believe Everything You Think by Joseph Nguyen. Forget positive thinking. The single most powerful way to end all suffering and effortlessly manifest your desires is to simply stop thinking. If you're ready to master the core principles without reading the entire book, like this video and subscribe for more high-impact summaries. Let's begin.
All right, let's get into one of the biggest ideas in the book, the difference between pain and suffering. The author says that pain is just a part of life. Bad things happen, and you can't really avoid that. But suffering, that's different. He says suffering is completely optional. It's not about pretending bad things aren't bad. It's about understanding that our reaction is what turns pain into suffering. He uses this great Buddhist analogy of 2 arrows. The first arrow is the actual bad event. Let's say you lose your job. That's the first arrow. It hits you and it hurts. You can't control it. But then comes the second arrow. This is the one we shoot at ourselves. It's the story we tell ourselves about losing the job. I'm a failure, I'll never find another job, why does this always happen to me? That second arrow is the suffering. And here's the thing, you don't have to shoot it, it's optional. The author talks about his own story, how he tried everything to stop feeling anxious and heavy. He did meditation, therapy, self-help books, all of it. But nothing really worked until he figured out this one thing about how our minds create our feelings. And that one thing is this: we live in the world of our thoughts, not the real world. Think about it. 2 people can be in the same room at the same party. One person is having the time of their life. The other is miserable and wants to go home. The room is the same, the music is the same. The only thing that's different is what they're thinking. We feel our thinking, not our reality. Here's another example he uses that makes it super clear. Imagine you hate your job. You can be at home on a Sunday night trying to relax. But the second you start thinking about going to work on Monday, you start feeling stressed out. The job isn't actually happening to you right now, but your thinking about it is real enough to make you suffer. It's all coming from the inside. So the real problem isn't the job, it's our thinking about the job. The book asks a really powerful question. Who would you be without the thought that you hated your job? The answer is, you'd probably just be a person relaxing on their couch, feeling fine. That shows how much power our thinking has. And this leads to the last key point. There's a big difference between thoughts and thinking. Thoughts just appear in your head. They're neutral. They're like clouds passing in the sky. Thinking is what happens when you grab onto one of those thoughts, judge it, analyze it, and build a whole negative story around it. That's what causes the problems. Thoughts just exist, but thinking is what creates suffering. And figuring out how to stop that active, stressful thinking is what the rest of the book is all about.
We've just explored the crucial distinction between pain and suffering, acknowledging that while pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice. This understanding leads us directly to the heart of the matter, the illusion of thought-based reality. We believe our thoughts define our reality, but this is a profound misconception. As Sydney Banks eloquently stated, thought is not reality, yet it is through thought that our realities are created. Consider this. You and a stranger could be sitting in the same bustling coffee shop, experiencing the same sights and sounds, yet your internal experience, your perception of that moment, could be vastly different. One person might feel overwhelmed by anxiety, while the other feels content and at peace. The external reality is identical, but the internal, subjective experience is uniquely shaped by individual thought processes. This subjective creation of reality extends to the meaning we ascribe to everything. Take the concept of money. To one person, it represents security and freedom. To another, It might symbolize greed and corruption. The physical object remains the same, but its meaning, and thus its impact on our emotional state, varies wildly based on our individual thought processes. This applies to everything we encounter, from our jobs to our relationships to our political beliefs. Each experience is filtered through the lens of our unique thinking, creating a personalized, subjective reality. The book emphasizes that it's not the event itself, but our interpretation of it, the meaning we create, that determines our emotional response. This brings us to a core concept: we can only feel what we are thinking. If you're filled with anxiety, frustration, and stress while sitting at home, it's not the external circumstances causing these feelings, but your thoughts about your job, your future, or any number of other things. The experience is very real, but its source isn't external events, but your internal world of thought. It's this very act of thinking, of actively engaging with thoughts and judging them, that creates suffering. It's not the thoughts themselves, but the constant mental commentary, the analysis, the worry that leads to emotional distress. The book powerfully illustrates this with the analogy of a young monk who discovers that his anger isn't caused by external disturbances, but by his own reaction, his thinking about those disturbances. The boat that bumped into his was empty. His anger was self-created. The solution isn't about forcing ourselves to think positively, but about something far more profound, recognizing that our natural state is one of peace, love, and joy. These positive emotions aren't generated through mental effort, but are present when the mind is still, when we cease the act of thinking. The book introduces the three principles: universal mind, universal consciousness, and thought. Understanding these principles unveils the mechanism by which our experience is created and how we can disengage from the cycle of thought-based suffering, accessing a deeper, more fulfilling reality. We will delve into these principles in the next section.
Identifying the root cause, thinking. Okay, so we've established that we're living in a world of our own thoughts. Now let's get to the root of the problem, the thinking itself. The author says that our thinking is what causes all our emotional suffering. It's not the bad things that happen to us, but the stories we tell ourselves about them. It's that second arrow we keep shooting at ourselves. He knows this because he tried everything to fix himself: habits, therapy, you name it, and nothing worked until he understood this one simple idea. He gives a couple of great examples to show what he means. First, imagine two people in the same coffee shop. One is having a full-blown life crisis. The other is just happily enjoying their coffee. Same place, same coffee, totally different experiences. Why? Because of what they're thinking. Then he tells this Zen story about a monk who wants to meditate. He goes out to the middle of a lake to be alone. Suddenly, another boat bumps into his. He gets furious, ready to yell at the person who hit him, but then he sees the boat is empty. And he gets it. His anger didn't come from the boat. It came from his reaction to the boat. The boat was empty. And most of the things that upset us are just empty boats too. They don't have the power to make us suffer until we start thinking about them. So why do we think so much in the first place? It's a survival thing. Our brains are built to look for danger to keep us alive. That worked great for avoiding lions, but in our modern world, it just keeps us in a constant state of stress. Our brain is good at keeping us alive, but not very good at making us happy. And this is where he makes a really important point about the difference between thoughts and thinking. Thoughts just pop into your head. They're raw, neutral, and effortless. They're like clouds passing by. Thinking is what you do with those thoughts. It's when you grab onto one, judge it, analyze it, and spin a whole story around it. That's the part that causes suffering. As he puts it, thoughts create, thinking destroys. Here's a quick experiment he suggests. Think about the amount of money you'd love to make in a year.
Feels pretty good, right? Now, think about making 5 times that amount. Suddenly, your brain kicks in. You start thinking, that's impossible. I could never do that. Who do I think I am? See? The negative feelings didn't come from the initial fun thought. They came from the active, judgmental thinking that followed. This is also why he says positive thinking is a trap. You don't need to force positive thoughts to feel good. In fact, think about a time you felt pure joy. Were you actively thinking about anything? Probably not. You were just in the moment. He says our natural state, like a baby's, is one of peace and happiness. All that thinking is just the noise that covers it up. It's simple. The more you think, the worse you feel. The less you think, the better you feel. Finally, he wraps this up by introducing something called the 3 principles: universal mind, consciousness, and thought. He says these are the building blocks of our reality, and understanding them is the real key to letting go of all that stressful thinking.
Thoughts as raw material. So we've just explored the roots of our thinking patterns, the very foundation upon which our experience is built. Now let's delve into the nature of those thoughts themselves. Think of them not as verbs, actions we perform, but as nouns, as things in and of themselves. They are simply there. They arrive, uninvited, unbidden, like visitors appearing on your doorstep. It takes no effort to have a thought. It's effortless, a quiet appearance, a flicker in the mind's eye. Consider that moment when a thought suddenly pops into your head, a memory, a worry, an idea. Did you choose to think it? No, it simply arose. This effortless nature is key to understanding their true character. This brings us to the next crucial concept: thoughts as neutral energy. They are, in and of themselves, neither positive nor negative. Imagine them as pure energy, like sunlight. The sun itself is not good or bad, it simply is. It's how we use that sunlight, whether to nurture a garden or cause a sunburn, that determines its effect. Similarly, a thought about a missed opportunity might feel unpleasant, but the thought itself is just energy, raw material. It's only when we latch onto it, analyze it, judge it, when we think about the thought, that it becomes imbued with negative emotion. We transform neutral energy into a source of suffering. This is why simply observing a thought without engaging with it, without judging it, is so powerful. By understanding that a thought is simply energy passing through your awareness, you begin to detach from its emotional charge. You become an observer, not a reactor. You create space, a quiet emptiness where the turmoil of thinking can subside, leaving behind the pure, clear light of your inherent state of well-being. This is not about suppressing thoughts. It's about recognizing their true nature and choosing not to engage in the destructive act of thinking about them. Thinking as the destructive force. So we know that thoughts are the raw material, the building blocks of our experience. Now we need to talk about the huge difference between just having a thought and the act of thinking. This is where things get messy. Think of it this way. A thought just shows up. It's neutral, like an ingredient sitting on the counter. It's just there. But thinking is what you do with it. It's when you pick up that ingredient and start chewing on it, analyzing it, judging it, and criticizing it. It's when you grab a thought and refuse to let it go. And all that active, non-stop thinking is exhausting. It takes a ton of mental energy, and that energy is what fuels all the judgment and self-criticism that makes us feel bad. Here's a perfect example. A thought pops into your head: I'd like to earn more money this year. As a thought, it's totally fine. It's just a desire. But then the thinking starts. Your brain kicks in with, oh, but I'm not good enough for that. I tried that last year and failed. My neighbor makes way more than me. Suddenly, that simple, neutral thought has been turned into a reason to feel anxious and bad about yourself. It was the thinking that did the damage, not the thought itself. The amount of energy you spend wrestling with that thought is exactly how much you're going to suffer. This goes right back to that Zen story about the monk and the empty boat. His anger didn't come from the boat bumping into him. It came from his thinking about it, judging it, seeing it as an annoying interruption. The boat was just a thing that happened. The suffering was created entirely in his head. So the key here isn't to stop having thoughts. That's impossible, and you wouldn't want to anyway. Thoughts are where all our creative ideas come from. The goal is to stop the exhausting, draining act of thinking. We have to learn to just observe our thoughts without judgment, like watching clouds drift across the sky. It's in that space between a thought just appearing and you starting to judge it. That's where you find peace.
The myth of positive thinking. We've just explored how thinking itself, rather than the content of our thoughts, acts as a destructive force in our lives. This leads us naturally to the next idea, the myth of positive thinking. Many believe that to feel better, we must actively cultivate positive thoughts. But is this truly the path to lasting peace and joy? The author challenges this widely held belief, suggesting that positive emotions aren't a product of conscious effort, but rather our inherent natural state. Let's consider a simple thought experiment. Think back to a time when you experienced overwhelming joy and love. Really feel into that memory for a moment. What were you thinking? Chances are, you weren't actively thinking, you were simply being. The feeling wasn't generated by a specific thought, but rather emerged from a state of presence, a state of what the book calls non-thinking. That joy and love were not a result of thinking positively, but a return to your natural, unburdened state. The book underscores that positive emotions are our default setting, much like a baby's natural state is one of blissful unconcern. It's the act of thinking, the mental chatter and judgment, that creates suffering. This is brilliantly illustrated with a thought experiment involving imagining a dream income and then multiplying it. The initial thought might evoke excitement, but the subsequent thinking about that thought, worrying about its attainability, judging its ambition, quickly generates negative feelings. The key takeaway is this: thoughts create, but thinking destroys. Think of your mind as a speedometer. The faster the needle spins, representing thoughts per minute, the more intense the negative emotions you experience, regardless of what the thoughts are about. Stress, anxiety, and frustration aren't caused by the content of your thoughts, but by the sheer volume of your thinking. Conversely, the intensity of positive emotions is inversely proportional to the amount of thinking. The less you think, the more profoundly you experience joy and love, because these emotions are your natural, unadulterated state, waiting to emerge when the noise of thinking subsides. The goal isn't to suppress thoughts entirely, but to quiet the relentless activity of thinking and allow yourself to simply be. This is a fundamental shift in perspective, moving from a place of forced positivity to the effortless embrace of your inherent capacity for joy. We've just explored the limitations of positive thinking, how it can sometimes become another form of mental striving. Now let's shift our focus to a more fundamental concept, the universal mind. Imagine an infinite wellspring of intelligence, the source of everything that is, ever was, or ever will be. This isn't a distant, detached deity, but the very life force permeating all of existence. It's the inherent wisdom within all things, a boundless source of creativity and connection. This universal mind is often described as infinite intelligence, the quantum field, or simply source. It's the unseen energy that connects everything, the underlying unity beneath the apparent diversity of the world. Think of it as the ocean and everything else as the waves, distinct yet inseparable from the whole. When we tap into this universal mind, we experience a deep sense of wholeness, a feeling of belonging and interconnectedness. Joy, peace, unconditional love, these aren't separate entities, but natural expressions of our inherent connection to this infinite source. The author emphasizes the concept of connection and wholeness. We often feel separated, isolated, struggling against the world. This is a direct result of the way we engage our thoughts, building walls around ourselves through our thinking. By understanding the universal mind, we begin to understand that these feelings of separation are illusions. True reality is a state of wholeness where we are effortlessly connected to the infinite intelligence of everything. It's a state of effortless knowing, a deep intuition that guides our actions and creates for us a life filled with joy.
Universal consciousness. Okay, so we've talked about this universal mind, which is like the intelligence behind everything. Now let's talk about the next piece of the puzzle, universal consciousness. If the universal mind is the electricity, then universal consciousness is the light bulb. It's the part of us that's actually aware of everything. It's the knowing that's always there before we start thinking. And this is where the book makes a really important distinction between awareness and perception. Here's the thing. Our basic awareness is always there, always on. But what we actually perceive, what we see and feel from moment to moment, is totally different. And it's shaped by one thing, our thinking. He uses a great example. Two people looking at the same ocean. One person sees this huge, scary, dangerous thing. The other sees total peace and beauty. The ocean is just the ocean. It hasn't changed. The only thing that's different is what each person is thinking about it. And this brings us right back to that two arrows idea. The first arrow is the bad thing that happens. You lose your job. That hurts. It's real. But the second arrow is the one that really causes the suffering. It's our thinking about losing the job. I'm a failure. This is a disaster. That's the story we tell ourselves. And that story is optional. And that's why he says we only ever feel our thinking. The event itself doesn't have feelings attached to it. We're the ones who add the feelings with our thoughts. So the real root of all our emotional suffering isn't what happens to us. It's the act of thinking about it, judging it, analyzing it, and getting lost in the story. The author says this constant thinking is what creates a false sense of separation, cutting us off from that basic, calm awareness. So this universal consciousness isn't some weird spiritual concept. It's just your default setting. It's that feeling of peace and quiet that's always underneath the noise of your thoughts. The goal isn't to get rid of your thoughts. The goal is just to stop getting so tangled up in the thinking. When you do that, you naturally settle back into that calm, aware state. That's where the peace is. Universal thought. We've just explored the vast landscape of universal consciousness, the boundless wellspring of all that is. Now, let's delve into the next layer of this profound understanding, universal thought. Think of universal consciousness as the ocean, infinite, powerful, and ever-present. Universal thought is the raw material, the waves that rise and fall upon the surface, shaping the forms and experiences we perceive. It's the creative energy, the potential for everything that exists, from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy. But unlike the ocean itself, which is ever constant, universal thought is dynamic, ever shifting, a constant flux of potential. This book emphasizes a crucial distinction, the difference between thoughts and thinking. Thoughts themselves are the raw material for creation. They are the energetic building blocks, spontaneously arising from the universal mind, a boundless wellspring of intelligence. These thoughts, in their raw state, are neither good nor bad. They simply are. They arrive effortlessly, like flashes of inspiration, intuitions, or ideas. It's the thinking, the active engagement, the analysis, the judgment, the endless mental churning we apply to these thoughts that creates suffering. It's the second arrow, as the Buddha described it. Remember the example of the dream income. The initial thought of your ideal yearly earnings, that's a thought, pure potential. But the moment you begin to analyze, to doubt, I'll never make that much, it's unrealistic, that's thinking. It's this second stage, this mental commentary, that generates negative emotions like anxiety and self-doubt. These feelings are not inherent to the initial thought, but are entirely a product of your engagement with it. Thinking acts as a filter, distorting the clear signal of the initial thought and muddying the waters of your experience. Joseph Nguyen's framework revolves around understanding this interplay of the three principles: universal mind, universal consciousness, and universal thought. The universal mind is the boundless source, universal consciousness is our awareness, and universal thought is the medium through which we interact with the universal mind, creating our perceived realities. The key to alleviating suffering lies in cultivating a state of non-thinking, allowing the raw, unfiltered thoughts from the universal mind to flow through consciousness without the interference of judgment or analysis. In this state of effortless receptivity, we tap into a wellspring of creativity, abundance, and peace, our natural state of being. The book is a guide to help you understand and cultivate this space within yourself.
Letting go of thinking. Okay, so we've just talked about the big idea of universal thought, this endless source of creative energy. So how do we actually use this idea in our lives? It's all about letting go of thinking. And this doesn't mean you have to stop your thoughts or have an empty mind. It's about changing your relationship with them. It's about realizing that the act of thinking, the non-stop analyzing and judging, is what causes all the problems. Like the author says, our reality is created through our thoughts. So the problem isn't what happens to us, it's what we think about what happens to us. The first step is super simple. Just become aware that you're thinking. That's it. You don't have to fight it, just notice it. He uses a really good analogy, a bowl of murky water. If you want to see through it, you don't have to filter it or boil it. You just have to leave it alone. Eventually, all the dirt will settle on its own and the water will become clear. Our minds are exactly like that. The more we fight and struggle with our thoughts, the murkier everything gets. But if we just step back and observe our thinking without getting involved, things naturally start to clear up. And this doesn't mean you'll never struggle. It just means you stop struggling against your own mind. It's like being in quicksand. The more you fight, the faster you sink. The only way out is to relax and let go. You're not trying to stop having thoughts. That's impossible. You're just letting go of the stressful thinking about them. Remember the author's line, "Thoughts create, thinking destroys." This goes right back to the story about the monk on the lake. He thought he could find peace by changing his location, but his own mind followed him there. It was only when he realized his anger was coming from his reaction to the empty boat, his thinking, that he finally got it. It wasn't the boat, it was his thinking about the boat. And look, this isn't a one-and-done thing. It's a process. You're going to have moments of clarity, and then you're going to get caught up in your head again. That's totally normal.
The whole point is just to notice when you're stuck in that thinking loop and gently let it go. The more you do this, the more space you create for that natural feeling of peace that's always been there underneath it all.
Thriving without thinking. Okay, so we know we need to let go of thinking, but what happens when we do? How does that actually help us in real life? Here's the strange part. To do your best work and feel your best, you actually have to get your thinking mind out of the way. You've probably heard of the flow state. It's when you're so into what you're doing that you completely lose track of time. You're just in the zone, and everything feels effortless. Think about a time you felt that way. Maybe you were playing a sport, or painting, or just having a really good conversation. Were you actively thinking about what you were doing? Probably not. You were just doing it. You were completely present. There's a Japanese concept for this called mushin, which basically means no mind. It doesn't mean your mind is empty. It just means your mind is free from all the chatter. Think of a professional athlete or a martial artist. They're not thinking, okay, now I need to move my left foot. They just react. Their body knows what to do without their mind getting in the way. That's mushin. And this gets to the core of it. The harder we try to force something by thinking about it, the more stress and resistance we create. The book makes it clear that the best results don't come from trying harder, they come from letting go. It's about trusting your gut instead of overthinking every single step. It's just like that muddy water analogy again. The more you stir it up by thinking, the messier it gets. The only way to get clarity is to stop stirring and let the dirt settle on its own. That quiet space you create when you stop overthinking, that's where the good stuff happens. That's where you'll do your best work, find your best ideas, and feel your most creative. That's where the real magic is.
Goals, dreams, and ambitions. Okay, so if we're supposed to stop thinking so much, what does that mean for our goals and dreams? Do we just stop wanting things? Not at all. The book says it's not about what you want, but why you want it. And it breaks it down into two types of goals. Goals from desperation and goals from inspiration. Desperation goals come from a place of feeling like you're not enough. They're heavy. You feel like you have to achieve them to finally be happy or successful. You're always chasing something. And even when you get it, the satisfaction doesn't last long because that empty feeling is still there. Inspired goals are the total opposite. They don't feel heavy. They feel light. It feels like a calling, like an idea just landed on you and you get to bring it to life. You're not doing it to fix something or prove something. You're doing it just for the joy of doing it. Think about an artist who paints because they just love to paint, not because they want to be famous. That's an inspired goal. The reward is the process itself. So, how do you know which is which? It all comes down to how it feels in your body. A desperation goal feels urgent, stressful, and heavy. An inspired goal feels light, exciting, and energizing. One feels like a chore you have to do. The other feels like a passion you get to do. The book gives you a really powerful question to ask yourself to find your real inspired goals. Ask yourself this: if I had all the money in the world, had already traveled everywhere, wasn't afraid of anything, and got zero recognition for what I did, what would I create or do? That question cuts through all the noise from your ego and gets straight to what your soul actually wants to do. The answer might surprise you, and the feeling you get when you think about that answer is your compass. This is what it means to create unconditionally. You're not doing it for something else like approval or money. You're doing it from a place of joy. And that's where that flow state comes from. You're not thinking, you're just creating. All right, so we've talked about goals. Now let's get into something that's connected to all of this: unconditional love. The author, Joseph, tells a really personal story about this. It's about his girlfriend, Kenna. He used to ask her, "Why do you love me?" And he could list all the reasons why he loved her. He had a whole list. But Kenna could never give him a reason. She would just say, "I just do." This really bugged him at first, but then it hit him. His love was conditional. It was based on a list of reasons, and if those reasons ever changed, his love could change too. He realized that wasn't real love, but her love was unconditional. It wasn't based on anything, it just was. It existed without needing a reason. And that's the whole idea. Unconditional love doesn't come from the other person. It comes from inside you. It's like you're so full of love that it just overflows onto other people. It's a love that doesn't ask why. Now, this same idea applies to how we create things. Most of us do conditional creation. We create something to get something else: money, approval, fame. It often feels like a chore, like you're always chasing something because you feel like you're not enough. But unconditional creation is different. You do it just for the joy of doing it. The act of creating is the reward itself. It comes from that same place of feeling whole and full already. You're not trying to get something, you're just expressing the joy that's already inside you. And you can only really get to this place when you're not stuck in your head overthinking everything. It's that state of flow, creating from a place of love, not from a place of need.
Unconditional creation. So that's unconditional love. Now let's talk about unconditional creation, which is a really similar idea. It's not about forcing things to happen. It's about creating something just for the pure joy of it. It's creating because you want to, not because you need to. The book breaks it down into two ways of doing things, from scarcity or from abundance. Creating from scarcity is what most of us do. We do things because we feel like we're missing something: money, approval, you name it. It's driven by fear and a sense of urgency. It feels heavy, stressful, and even when you get what you want, you still feel empty. Then there's creating from abundance. The book uses a great example: baking a cake. You could bake a cake because you have to feed your family. That's a necessity. But you could also bake a cake just because you love the process, the smell, the mixing, the creativity. There's no pressure. It's just fun. That second one is unconditional creation. And this doesn't mean you stop having goals. It just means you change where they come from. Goals from desperation feel heavy. Goals from inspiration feel light and exciting. When you create this way, you're not so focused on the final result. The joy is in the doing. That's what people are talking about when they say they're in a flow state. They're completely lost in the process. So the book gives you a powerful question to ask yourself to find these kinds of goals. Imagine you had all the time, money, and recognition in the world. What would you create just for the love of it? Don't overthink it. Just let the answer come to you. Those ideas that pop up, those are the seeds of unconditional creation. They're the things that come from a place of joy, not from a place of fear.
Potential obstacles. So this all sounds great, but what happens when you actually try to do it? What are the problems you'll run into? This isn't about avoiding challenges. It's just about knowing what to expect so you can handle them from a place of peace, not old habits. And here's the biggest one, which sounds crazy. Peace can feel really uncomfortable at first. Think about it. For a lot of us, our whole life has been run by the nonstop chatter in our heads. Worrying and stressing is familiar. It's almost comfortable. So when you finally get a moment of real quiet, it can feel weird, even wrong. Your ego, that part of you that loves to think, starts to panic. It starts whispering things like, "Are you just being lazy?" Or "Shouldn't you be worried about something right now?" This all comes down to a fear of the unknown. Your ego likes to be in control, and peace feels like you're letting go of the steering wheel. It's giving up what's familiar even if what's familiar is suffering. Your brain is so used to looking for threats that it gets suspicious when there aren't any. Remember the bowl of murky water? This uncomfortable feeling is that moment when the dirt is starting to settle, but the water isn't totally clear yet. It's a natural part of the process. So if you feel this discomfort, don't think you're doing it wrong. It's actually a sign that you're making progress. The ego is fighting back because you're starting to change. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just see those worried thoughts for what they are. Old habits. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is just to notice when you're caught up in your head and gently come back to the present moment, again and again. Overcoming obstacles. So we've explored the potential bumps in the road that might arise as you begin to live in a state of non-thinking. But what about navigating those challenges? How do we maintain our faith, practice self-compassion, and return to that peaceful space of non-thinking when obstacles appear? Maintaining faith is crucial. Remember that feeling of profound peace and joy? That's your natural state, a testament to the boundless potential within you. When doubt creeps in, and it will, recall the feeling. Think back to the moments where you felt most connected, most at one with life. That memory, that feeling, is your anchor. It's the evidence that this isn't some fleeting illusion, but a deep, inherent truth within you. The author emphasizes that the universe is working for you, not against you. Every challenge is an opportunity, a lesson in the grand journey of self-discovery. Have faith in this process. Trust in the unfolding of your life, even when you can't see the path ahead. Self-compassion becomes paramount. We are human. We will inevitably get caught in the web of our thinking. We will fall back into old patterns of worry, anxiety, and doubt. The key isn't to eliminate these experiences entirely. That's unrealistic. But to cultivate a gentle understanding. When you find yourself caught in a negative thought loop, don't berate yourself. Instead, gently acknowledge the thought. Observe it as a passing cloud, and then guide your attention back to the present moment. Remember the analogy of the murky water. With patience, the sediment settles and clarity returns. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend struggling with similar challenges. And finally, the power of returning to non-thinking. Remember, it's not about forcibly stopping all thought. That's impossible, and it would only create more suffering. Instead, it's about recognizing when you're caught in the grip of thinking, acknowledging the negative emotions that arise, and gently guiding your attention back to the present moment. Focus on your breath, on the sensations in your body, on the world around you. Engage your senses. Notice the sounds, the smells, the textures. The more you practice this, the quicker you'll become at recognizing the shift into thinking and redirecting your focus back to this state of stillness and peace. This isn't a destination, but a continuous practice, an ongoing exploration of your inner landscape. Each time you gently return to non-thinking, you are strengthening your connection to your true self, reinforcing that sense of peace and joy, making it easier and easier to reside there. Trust in the journey. Trust in the process. Trust in yourself.
A guide to stop thinking. Having explored the obstacles we might face on our journey towards inner peace, we now turn our attention to a practical guide: how to actually stop thinking. This isn't about silencing your mind entirely, that's impossible, but about significantly reducing the amount of thinking you do, the mental effort that fuels our suffering. Remember, thoughts are the raw materials of creation, but thinking, the act of analyzing and judging those thoughts, is where the suffering begins. The framework for stopping thinking is threefold.
First, we must cultivate awareness. We need to recognize when we're caught in the loop of thinking, identifying the churning anxieties, self-doubts, and negative emotions that signal its presence. This self-awareness is the first crucial step. It's the moment we begin to detach from the grip of our thoughts. Joseph Nguyen uses the analogy of a bowl of murky water. The dirt represents our thinking, and simply allowing it to settle without frantic attempts to filter or boil it is the key to clarity. Second, we must learn to manage our triggers. These are the environmental factors that ignite the fire of overthinking. This could range from specific foods that affect our energy levels to digital distractions, social media interactions, or the constant barrage of information in our modern lives. Creating a comprehensive list of personal triggers, categorizing them, and then strategically removing or mitigating them from your environment is a practical way to create a non-thinking space. Third, we must consciously create a non-thinking environment. This extends beyond simply eliminating triggers. It's about actively building an environment that fosters peace and calm. This could include creating a morning activation ritual, a consistent set of activities designed to set a peaceful tone for the day, or incorporating regular periods of quiet reflection, meditation, or activities that naturally induce a state of flow, where your focus is so complete that the mind stills. The goal is to make these periods of quietude a regular part of your day, creating momentum towards sustained inner peace. Think of it like building a muscle. The more you practice non-thinking, the stronger your ability to access it becomes. Just as athletes need rest to recover and build strength, your mind requires time to settle and integrate this new way of being. Remember, the journey to non-thinking is not linear. There will be moments of relapse, periods where your mind gets caught up in thinking again. This is entirely normal. The crucial thing is to recognize this happening and gently guide yourself back to the practice of awareness, managing triggers, and creating a peaceful environment. The practice of non-thinking is a continuous process, a return to our natural state of being, a state of peace, love, and joy that resides beneath the surface of our thinking. The more you embrace this practice, the more deeply you'll experience the transformative power of letting go of the beliefs that cause you to suffer.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about letting go of thinking, but how does this actually help you stop doing the stuff you don't want to do, those bad habits we all have? The book says it's not about willpower or motivation. That stuff never lasts. It's about changing your relationship with your thoughts. The first step is to just see the patterns. You have to be really honest with yourself. What's the belief behind the habit? Are there certain thoughts that always lead to the same bad behavior? For example, if you always procrastinate, maybe the real reason is a belief that you're not good enough, so you're afraid to even start. You have to find that core belief to untangle the habit. Next, you have to challenge those beliefs. And this isn't about repeating positive affirmations. It's about asking yourself, is that negative thought actually true? Or is it just an old story I've been telling myself for years? Remember that coffee shop example? The coffee shop is the same, but the filter, the thinking is different for each person. You have to question your filter. And the last part is actively letting go. This means when you feel yourself slipping into that old bad habit, you have to be present. You'll notice the negative thought pop up. The trick is to just see it. Acknowledge it, but don't grab onto it. Let it float by like a cloud. The book says your feelings are your guide. If you start to feel bad, that's your alarm bell. It's a signal that you're stuck in a negative thought loop. The more you notice that signal, the better you get at redirecting yourself back to a place of peace. It's not about fighting your thoughts. It's about understanding them. And you start to see that you're not controlled by your thinking anymore. You get to choose. So, we've talked about how to stop bad habits. Now let's talk about the flip side of that. How to start good ones by following your intuition. And we're not talking about some mystical, psychic power here. We're just talking about that deep down gut feeling, the inner wisdom that's always there, buried under all our thinking. To do this, the book says you need one thing first: faith. Not blind faith. It's faith in yourself. It's trusting that you know what's right for you, even when you can't logically explain why. This is hard for a lot of people. Like the book says, people have a hard time letting go of their suffering. Out of the fear of the unknown, they prefer suffering that is familiar. It's easier to stick with the anxiety you know than to step into a peace you don't. So, how do you actually hear your intuition when your brain is screaming at you? The key is to quiet the mind. All that non-stop thinking is like static on the radio, blocking the signal. The signal is your intuition, which is your connection to what the book calls the universal mind or source, that bigger intelligence that guides everything. Remember, thoughts themselves aren't the problem. Thoughts are the raw material. It's the thinking, the judging, the analyzing, the second-guessing that creates all the static and suffering. It's just like that Zen story about the monk on the lake. His anger didn't come from the empty boat bumping into him. It came from his thinking about the boat. It's a perfect example of how our feelings come from our thinking, not from what actually happens. So, how do you do this in a practical way? You have to cultivate a state of non-thinking. It's that flow state athletes talk about, where your mind is clear and your actions are effortless. It's not something you have to force. It's actually your natural state. You get back to it whenever you notice you're lost in thought and just let it go. But look, this can feel scary at first. Stepping into that quiet space can feel weird. Just remember that all the fear is coming from your thinking. You're always just one thought away from feeling peaceful again. The goal isn't to never think. It's just to spend less time stuck in your head. Trusting your gut takes courage. It's about letting go of the need to control everything and trusting that your inner wisdom knows the way.
Creating space for miracles. Having explored the power of following your intuition, we now turn to a concept equally profound: creating space for miracles. This isn't about wishing upon a star. It's about cultivating an inner landscape receptive to the extraordinary. Think of it like this. Imagine a teacup, overflowing with swirling muddy tea. There's no room for anything new, no space for a fresh, clear brew. That teacup is your mind, cluttered with thoughts and anxieties. To make room for something truly special, a miracle if you will, you must first empty the cup. Emptiness in this context doesn't mean a void of thought or a passive state of being. It's about clearing the mental clutter, the incessant chatter that prevents us from accessing a deeper, more intuitive level of awareness. It's about quieting the mental noise so that we can receive subtle guidance, those intuitive nudges that lead to breakthroughs. It's the stillness between the notes, the space that allows the music to resonate. It's the calm before the storm, the breath before the dive. When we cultivate this emptiness, we invite in something more than just peace. We open the door for miracles. This involves recognizing that we only feel what we are thinking. Negative emotions, they are merely the ripples in a pond of overthinking. By ceasing to actively engage with those thoughts, we allow the waters to still, revealing the pristine clarity of our natural state, a state of being that is inherently peaceful, loving, and joyful. This stillness isn't a passive resignation, but an active choice to relinquish control, to trust in a source larger than ourselves, a source of boundless potential. This is where the magic truly happens, where the seemingly impossible becomes possible. When our minds are clear, we become more attuned to what Joseph Nguyen calls divine downloads, those intuitive insights, those flashes of inspiration that come to us seemingly out of nowhere. These downloads are not random. They're the whispers of infinite intelligence, the voice of intuition guiding us towards the life we were meant to live, towards the unique contributions we're destined to make. They are the answers we already possess, but our constant thinking drowns them out. The process of receiving these downloads begins with awareness, acknowledging the negative emotions born from thinking. Then comes the act of creating space by surrendering the need to analyze, to predict, to control. Have faith that the answers will come. Trust that the universe, or infinite intelligence, has your back. Finally, magnify the feelings of love, peace, and joy that naturally arise as you release your grip on thinking. Meet your challenges with love, and the solutions will emerge. Remember, it's not the size of the miracle that matters, but the space you create for it to appear. Just as the Zen master showed the scholar, overflowing with preconceived notions, a full cup leaves no room for more. Empty your cup, quiet your mind, and make space for the miracles that are waiting to unfold.
Having explored the profound power of creating space for miracles, we now move to embracing the ongoing journey of growth itself. This isn't about a destination, a single aha moment, but a continuous unfolding, a deepening of our understanding. Remember the quote, "We cannot change what we are not aware of, and once we are aware, we cannot help but change." This journey is inherent to life. It's the very essence of our evolution. The simplicity of truth is perhaps the most surprising element of this journey. The author emphasizes that the truth is always simple. It's our thinking that complicates things. Think of the Zen parable of the young monk and the empty boat. His anger wasn't caused by external events, the birds, the wind, the other boat, but his thinking about those events. The truth, like the empty boat, is often profoundly simple, yet we obscure it with layers of interpretation and judgment. This leads us directly to the call to action. The core message of the book isn't just intellectual understanding, but a practical shift in how we relate to our thoughts. We've learned that thinking, the act of analyzing and judging our thoughts, is the root of our suffering. But thoughts themselves, the raw material of creation, are neutral. The key is to differentiate between the two, allowing thoughts to arise and flow without getting caught in the reactive cycle of thinking. It's about becoming aware of the thought-o-meter, that internal gauge measuring the intensity of our thinking, directly correlated to our emotional experience. The path isn't about suppressing thoughts or forcing positivity, but about creating space, a space of non-thinking where our natural state of peace, love, and joy can emerge. It's about trusting our intuition, that inner compass that guides us beyond the limitations of our thinking minds. This is a process, not a destination. There will be moments of relapse where thinking takes over, but the key is to recognize it, acknowledge it, and gently return to the present moment. This ongoing practice of presence is the very essence of embracing the journey, a journey of continuous growth, fueled by the simplicity of truth and guided by the unwavering call to action. Let go of thinking and embrace the peace that lies within.